Welcome to the Women in Depth podcast. I'm your host, Lourdes Viato. Thank you for joining us. This podcast is about cultivating a conversation around the uncomfortable, uncertain, and unknown aspects of a woman's experience. Through interviews and stories, we'll go beneath the surface to take a deeper look at relationships, motherhood, self-acceptance, authenticity, aging, healing, suffering, loss, and other areas connected to the emotional and psychological well-being of women. The information shared in this podcast is not a substitute for seeking help from a licensed mental health professional. Hi, and welcome to episode 4 of the Women in Depth podcast. Today, our guest is Shirani Pathak. Shirani is an entrepreneur and psychotherapist, and she's also the owner of the Relationship Center of Silicon Valley. Shirani also is an educator, conducting regular workshops and classes, writer, and coach. Her main approach and what sets her aside is her blending of spirituality into everything that she does. I'm really excited about having Shirani on the show today because one of the things that she does at her counseling center is help women achieve success in their relationships by working on their most important one, their relationship with themselves. I know from personal experience and in my work with women that our relationship with ourselves can be neglected, can be completely forgotten, or can be harmful in the sense that we are hurting ourselves whether we're aware of it or not, and we don't usually put the same attention and focus and care into our relationship with ourselves as we do to the many other people in our lives. And because women are traditionally the nurturers and the caretakers, it is almost our default button to make sure that our relationships are the focal point and we're taking care of the people we love and doing all the things that we think we need to do to be present for them and be supportive. In this conversation with Shirani, I'm looking forward to exploring what it means to have a healthy relationship with ourselves, what it looks like when that's not happening, and where we get stuck, what makes it difficult to really get into healthy relationship with ourselves. I hope you enjoy today's conversation. Shirani, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
I am really excited about our conversation because one of the things that has really gotten my attention when I've followed your work, read your blog posts, is the emphasis on a person's relationship with themselves. And so knowing that about you and that being a focal point of how you support your clients, I really am looking forward to learning more about that because I do agree with you that a person's relationship to themselves is key to everything.
Yeah, well, and this is a topic I'm so passionate about, and I love speaking about and teaching about and helping women in particular learn about, because our relationships with ourselves is the most important thing. I feel like we're born with ourselves and we die with ourselves. And so I feel like it is the relationship that we must nourish and cultivate as our top priority throughout our lives.
Yeah, and I think too that we put that relationship on the back burner, and often I think it's one of the relationships we handle, I would say, with the least care or with the least awareness, or even we can be actually very harmful to ourselves and not really be aware that that's even happening.
Yes, and I would agree with you that we tend to really I'd like to even use the word abuse. Like we really do abuse ourselves, and we're really unkind and unloving with ourselves in so often in ways that we don't even consciously know that we're doing.
Yeah. So Shirani, I got a little ahead of myself, but that's okay. So I'm going to back up a little bit, and I would like you to just share a little bit more about yourself and your practice.
Oh, of course. So, I am a holistic psychotherapist and a healer, intuitive healer, and my passion truly is working with women who struggle in relationships. I am the owner and founder of the Relationship Center of Silicon Valley. It's a private holistic psychotherapy practice here in the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm located in San Jose, California, where the weather is always beautiful and it's always nice. And I have interns, marriage and family therapy interns that work with me here at the center. And everything that we do takes a completely holistic mind, body, and spirit approach. And I am also a certified energy medicine practitioner trained in the Centara system. And my interns right now is a Reiki master. And so really when we talk about fully integrating mind, body, and spirit at the center, we really mean it. Because energy medicine does play a large part in us being able to hold the psychotherapeutic healing container as well.
I think that's really wonderful that you provide all those different ways of connecting and meeting a client where they're at, because I think when people traditionally think of therapy, it's talk therapy that is the norm and what people connect with. And there's so many other ways to help a person to live optimally and to move forward and, in their relationships, with their vocations, just, as a parent. And so I love that you bring all these other ways of supporting and helping your clients to the table beyond just the regular face-to-face talk therapy.
Thank you. And we like to tell clients from that initial call that we are not your run-of-the-mill therapists, that we really do things a little bit differently. And you know what? The reality is, with the state of the world right now, people are thirsting for this type of completely integrated approach, blending in spirituality and other modalities to help this deep, deep healing that we are so craving right now. So I'm just really honored to be able to have found a superpower gift that really blends all this together.
And I think, just speaking to how you are in your practice, pulling all of these aspects of being together as part of the healing process, integrating them, I think that's a good parallel or metaphor for how society is trying to heal from being so fragmented and disconnected. And so it's this real move towards connection and wholeness.
Yeah, it's really about pulling all those different parts and pieces of ourselves back into alignment, back into coherence, so that we are whole and complete again. Because I feel like along the way, we've lost pieces of ourselves.
Yeah. One of the things, too, that you just reminded me of when you were telling a little bit more about your practice, I know that, there's a lot of ways that you are different from other practices, but one of the ways that, is really unique is that you blend spirituality into the work with clients. And so I wanted to ask you, how do you blend spirituality with clients who come from different ways of, believing of, some of them may belong to an organized religion, some may not. How do you work with people who come from different spaces when it comes to religion and spirituality?
Well, I think the first and most important thing is to recognize and respect that, different people may have different beliefs. And it's actually on my intake forms. I have it there. One of the last questions is religion and spirituality important to you? And if so, would you like to incorporate it into our time together in our therapy work? So it's getting the consent right off the bat. And most people are open to using that. And it's written all over my website. It's everywhere. When you look me up, it's no secret that I operate from this perspective. And so it's really about just meeting where the client, where they're at. And I have had many people of different faiths come through, and yet they can still resonate with the spiritual pieces, because I don't come at it from this, particular religion or this particular dogma. It's really more of that universal spiritual wisdom, the things where even at the core of organized religion, that these are the spiritual truths that are there as well, underneath kind of some of the more organized aspects of it.
So pulling at the pieces that connect just regardless of what the actual practice looks like on the outside.
Yes.
Okay. So today, Shirani, I wanted to speak with you more about a person's relationship with themselves, or more specifically, a woman's relationship to herself.
Mm-hmm.
So could we start with maybe you sharing why you have found this to be so important?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's because I feel like as women, we so often are taught to care for others first. We're by nature, most of us are more nurturing, and, societally, we've just been taught that, if you're a woman, you're supposed to care for others. You're supposed to be taken care of, whether it's as a daughter, you're there helping with your siblings, or you're there helping with your parents, or as you continue to grow and you're in partnership, and as a girlfriend or a wife, you're there to help take care of your husband or your partner, and then we continue, and as a mom, you're there to take care of your children, and so it keeps going on and on. And the thing that we often forget is that we need to really be nourishing and nurturing our relationship with ourselves. It's as though women aren't taught that our first relationship has to be with ourselves. And honestly, I'm going to back up and say a little bit, because I do use spirituality a lot. Not only is it our relationship with ourselves, but it's our relationship. We need to also foster and nourish a relationship with spirit or source or God or goddess or the universe or whatever else you call it. So when I talk with my clients and with women about this, it's that there are two very important relationships that must be nurtured first and foremost. And those are relationship with something greater than you and relationship with yourself. Because when we're not taking care of ourselves, we just can't be there to really give and nurture and nourish others. Like if we're not nourishing and nurturing ourselves, we have no idea how to do it in a kind and loving way with others. And so often we see women getting burnt out or getting, just worn out of this role of constantly caring for others and not taking care of themselves. And I also believe that the connection with something greater than us is equally important to nurture and nourish, because then we recognize that we're not so alone and that we don't have to do it all by ourselves, that there is something bigger and greater, like the same wisdom that can turn an acorn into an oak tree and the fetus into a baby, right? Like that same wisdom that can do all that is also here supporting you in your life, and that it's important to be able to recognize that and have a relationship with that as well as a relationship with yourself.
There's so much that you just said there that I want to respond to, but one of the things that stood out for me when you were speaking, Shirani, was in episode 1 of the podcast, I interviewed Sabrina Santa Clara on the experience of loneliness. As I was thinking about what you were saying, it also reminded me that, just as Sabrina shared that there's a need for us to be connected not only to ourselves, but to something greater than us. And that can be religion, spirituality, your family, but it has to be something bigger than you, that even if a person has a lot of relationships, whether they're a parent, a spouse, a sibling, that if you don't have the connection or the relationship with yourself or something greater, those other external relationships really are not going to be able to support you fully.
Yes, absolutely.
So, Shirani, could you share a little bit about what are some of the ways that not being in relationship with yourself or not being in a loving relationship with yourself can show up in a woman's life? What are some of the experiences that maybe your clients bring in that show that this person needs to really work on healing this relationship?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, most often what I tend to see is women will often find themselves in similar patterns and situations where they feel they are not being validated or they're not receiving love or affection or appreciation. And oftentimes this looks like, because, most people don't come to me with a Google search that says, loving myself. Like, that's not how most people learn that this is work that they need to do. What they end up, the way it presents themselves or way it presents itself in their lives is noticing a trend of like, why do none of my romantic partnerships ever work out? Like, why am I constantly attracted to the same type of person who doesn't give me the love and affection that I so want and desire? Or why are my friends totally flaky? Like, what is it about me that I can't, like, why don't I have a solid group of girlfriends or even one best friend? Like, why am I not able to have even close platonic relationships? Or sometimes it looks like, friends are fine, romantic partnerships are fine, but at work, I'm constantly manifesting the same overbearing, dominant boss who is not able to recognize my value and my worth and everything that I bring to the table. So these are the different ways that I see it manifest.
So this process of getting into healthy relationship with yourself begins with many people noticing trends or patterns in their interactions with other people, and then beginning to ask the question of what is going on here.
Yes. And most of the time, women will already have started to reflect, and many of them, some of them will still just be wondering why, like, why is this pattern constantly in my life? But there are some of them who are at the point where they can recognize, wait a minute, I am the common denominator in all these relationships. And so what about me needs some sorting out?
Yeah, I love that, because right then when they ask that question, what about me, they are beginning to nurture that relationship with themselves just by asking the question.
Absolutely, because it brings the awareness to the relationship with self.
Yeah. And so once a woman has come to that realization that I need to take a look at myself, what are some of the next steps? What happens in this process of beginning to heal your relationship with yourself, or just step into relationship with yourself?
Yeah, and I think that's a beautiful way of phrasing it, Lourdes, being able to step into her relationship with herself. Because often that's what I find is that women don't even have a relationship with themselves. It's as though she's like, what do you mean I have to love myself? I go to yoga and I work out and I eat well. Like, how am I not loving myself? And when in reality, yes, eating well and working out and doing yoga and all those things are really great and really nice. But there's also a deeper level and a deeper layer of relating with yourself. And it really comes down to just the first thing I like to do with everyone is laying that foundation, coming in and being able to recognize, okay, what have the patterns been? Okay. And so these are the patterns, and then starting to build up her relationship with herself, which often looks like helping her with affirmations, and positive affirmations, actually, because 9 times out of 10 we're affirming negative beliefs about ourselves. That's what the research shows. And so it's about how can she flip the script and start affirming positive things about herself. Oftentimes I recommend that women keep a daily log, track at least 3 things every day that they either appreciate and value about themselves, or that are qualities and characteristics of themselves that they value. And it's okay if they can't come up with any on their own at first. Maybe they think about, well, what do friends say about them? Oh, friends say that I'm kind and I'm caring. Okay. And so that's kind of the foundational work, is really starting to flip the script. And then we go into kind of some of the deeper work. And I want to just mention that this work, getting into relationship with yourself, it's a process, and it takes some time. to be able to get into right relationship with yourself. And so the work doesn't happen overnight. It comes as a slow and gradual process. And so once she can start to recognize what are some of her positive qualities, or starting to rewrite the script, then we have an opportunity to go a little bit further and see, okay, well, where did some of these stories come from? Or where did you learn that it's not important to value yourself? And then starting to relate with those different parts as the work continues to move forward.
You know, I love that you mentioned that loving yourself is not the same as going to yoga, exercising, eating healthily. That's a part of it. But I would say that the more significant part, and probably the most difficult part to really begin to grapple with, is when you take that inner journey and really start to explore what's happening within you. Because what you're describing, you know, this process, it's really like being in a relationship with someone else, where it doesn't turn into this amazing, wonderful, strong relationship overnight. You get to know someone, you begin to dialogue with them, you learn about their strengths, their weaknesses, where they get stuck. It's really that same process with yourself.
Absolutely. And I would even say that sometimes it's even more challenging to start nurturing a relationship with yourself, because there's a lot of resistance that most women meet themselves with when they start to do this work, because then they start to come into the old tapes, those old stories that say, well, you're not supposed to take care of yourself, or you're supposed to take care of everyone first. Well, it's selfish if you prioritize yourself, and you're so lazy if you take some time to, you know, rest and relax. Like, those aren't things. And so it actually, I would argue, is a little bit more complicated than trying to form a relationship with someone outside of yourself.
That's a really good point, because I feel that women, especially with being, you know, nurturers and caretakers, we can be very compassionate and loving and forgiving and gentle with others, and not even really aware of how we don't treat ourselves the same way, you know. And I think also another piece of this resistance would be when you start to figure out the tapes and start to say, okay, this is me, this isn't me, I need to shift this. And that starts to affect people in your world, then you have the reactions and opinions of other people and what they think of the shift that you're making.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's not fun to go there. There's a lot of resistance. Yeah.
And I think, too, that part of this getting into healthy relationship with yourself, oftentimes, you know, I've seen this with the women that I work with, oftentimes there's a sacrifice for getting into healthy relationship with yourself, where maybe they need to step away from situations or people that are really not going to support them in being in good relationship with themselves.
Yeah, and that's one of the challenging parts, because oftentimes as we embark upon our healing journey, and as we start to heal and grow and things shift, and we start to have awareness of the way we've been treating ourselves, because honestly, I feel like, and this kind of goes back to the thing you just mentioned, I feel like we are the most violent in our relationships with ourselves, because of the way we beat the heck out of ourselves in our mind, and the things that we think about ourselves and the things that we say about ourselves. And so, but when we start to have awareness around, like, oh, wow, look at what I've been doing to myself, or what I've been saying to myself, and wow, look how these old stories have kept me stuck in patterns that reflect to me that story, that make that story true, you know, that affirm that negative story about myself. Once women start to have awareness around it, and they start to grow, and they start to recognize, wait a minute, that story, first of all, is not even mine. Second of all, it's not even true. And third of all, I'm going to start acting differently. That's where fallout can happen. And it's really uncomfortable for a number of, the people I work with, especially those who come in who are already in relationships. Especially intimate partnerships. And they're like, ooh, I don't know where this journey is going to take me. And I have to let them know, yeah, we don't know either. Like, as you continue to grow and heal and evolve, maybe your partner hops on the train and comes on that journey with you and grows and evolves with you. Or maybe they're not ready to hop on that evolution train with you. And they might have to, they might sift out and be left as part of the old stories. Same thing happens with friendships. People start to see as they grow and heal and evolve, sometimes those friendships that aren't conducive to the new story sift and fall out.
Yeah. What you're saying reminds me of a quote from one of my mentors. And the quality of a person's relationships is in direct proportion to the quality of the relationship they have with themselves. And so it makes sense that as a person, as a woman begins to love herself, to nourish herself, to make choices that align with what's in her best interest, that relationships that no longer fit, that no longer support, are just going to naturally fall away.
Yep. Absolutely. And I love that quote. That's exactly what I teach. It's exactly what I work with. It's beautiful and it's so spot on. And I also think about it in that mirroring kind of way, like the way we feel about ourselves, the world only reflects back to us the way we feel about ourselves. So our reality is created by our beliefs about ourselves. So if I am a woman who deep down inside doesn't believe that I am deserving of love and affection and appreciation, my external reality will reflect that, whether it be in romantic relationships and in friendships or in my work world, that will always be reflected back to me. And then I will wonder, well, why is this happening to me? And then that's where the switch happens, is being able to zoom out from that victim place of why is this happening to me into the, oh, and what's here for me to learn and heal and grow from.
Yeah. And I love that you shared that perspective, because at times it can seems almost counterintuitive or difficult to think, I have to look at me, these things that are happening outside of me that people are doing to me and making me feel, that I have to look at me. But yet when you do that, it's incredibly freeing. And there's so much more possibility. Your world just expands. And there's really almost, from what I've seen with myself and with the women that I work with, once a woman begins to make this inner shift within herself, the rest of it just kind of falls into place. They really don't have to do anything, because situations and people that don't support their highest good will just naturally begin to fall away, or it becomes more difficult to sustain those relationships or structures in their life.
Yep. And that's that sifting that happens. Like, that is so exactly what happens as we grow and heal and evolve.
So, Shirani, I wanted to ask you, what do you think are some of the misunderstandings or fears or myths that women might have around their relationship with themselves and doing this work to nurture that relationship? Because one of the things that that I often hear is, is that selfish of me? Am I not being a good person if I put myself first? Am I saying that I'm more important than my children or my spouse? So that's just what came to mind for me. And I don't know if if there's any others that you can share, or if you want to just reflect on that one.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting, as you were asking the question, my mind immediately went to it's selfish. And I know that I've mentioned that earlier, during our time together, is this thought of it is selfish. And I think that is the number one myth and belief that we come across, especially, myself as a woman as well. I'm human, so it's not like I'm immune from it. And oftentimes that thought can slip in, and it can be, oh, it's so selfish of me. When in reality, and this is what I have to help anyone that I work with understand, whether it be an individual client or whether it be a workshop participant, that it is actually the most selfless thing that we can do to take care of ourselves, because only when we are taking care of ourselves, only then is our cup full, and we can only pour from a full cup. Like, our cup needs to be so full that it's overflowing, and only then do we have love and nurturing to give to others. Because if we're trying to pour from an empty cup, we have absolutely nothing to give. And one of the examples that I use in my workshops often is, like, how many times have you gone to the store and, heard, or maybe you've done this yourself, where a child is so excited and mommy, mommy, mommy. And because mommy hasn't, taken care of her basic needs, such as she didn't sleep well last night, because she was up late trying to take care of, lunches and everything else. And she didn't eat when she was supposed to because she was running late after all her errands. And who knows, maybe mom didn't even go pee when she had to, right? And all of a sudden, here's this young child who's so excited, mommy, mommy, mommy. And mommy, because she hasn't taken care of herself, turns around and goes, what do you want? And that just, and without meaning to, right? Like,
Yeah.
And that's what I so often see and hear. And when I talk about this in my workshops, all the women nod, like whether they're parents or not, like they can totally relate with that scenario. And that's what happens when we don't take care of ourselves. Now, had mommy gotten herself to bed on time and been a little bit more planful, maybe around, her to-do list, and recognizing, well, maybe all 10 things don't need to be taken care of today. Maybe 7 things get done today so that I can still eat and use the restroom, and that way I can be present for my children. So when my child says, mommy, 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 I can turn around and say, yes, honey, instead of what?
Yeah. And, I was nodding too, so I totally relate. And I think that maybe something that some listeners might be saying is, but I don't have any time. I have to stay up late. There's no other way. I'm tired because there's so many things I have to do. And, it's not as simple as, mommy, get some sleep, or mommy, plan better. So what would you say to someone maybe who is feeling that or thinking that?
I would say to them, you are enough. And my own personal mantra recently has been, I have done enough for today, and I am enough, and it's time to put me to rest. Because I'm human. I can fall victim to that thinking too. And basically what it is, it's the inner hustler. It's a part of that old story that says, well, I'm not deserving of love, or I have to do, or I have to care, or I have to do these things. It's this, Brené Brown calls it the hustle. It's our inner hustler just trying to prove her worth. And that's where it's important for her to recognize. That's why I said, maybe all 10 things off the to-do list don't get done today, and knowing that it's okay if all 10 things off the to-do list don't get done today. Maybe 4 of them get done, maybe 7 of them get done. It doesn't matter. That you are enough and you do enough, and that it's important for you to be able to take care of yourself. Because only when you're well rested, only when you're well fed, only when you've gone to the bathroom, when you have the call to go to the bathroom, only then can you really be present in your life and in your relationships with others and in the lives of others. And it's funny because as I'm saying it, it's almost like a baby, right? Like, in order for a child, let's say a toddler, to be to be functioning well, they need their nap, they need their meals, and they need to make sure they're going to the bathroom on time, right? In so many ways, we don't outgrow that. Like, we really need to be
Right.
making sure that we're taking care of those very basic needs of ourselves in order to be able to be pleasant companions. Because I don't know about you all, but a 2-year-old who hasn't taken their nap is really not a pleasant person to be around. So imagine mommy who hasn't gotten enough rest. It probably isn't a very pleasant either.
And I like that reminder, Shirani, that a lot of times we don't really stop and examine all the things that we think we have to do or all the things on our to-do list. And really, when you stop and take a look at, what you have lined up for the day, how much of that really has to be done? How much of it have you chosen and taken on? And how much of that do you feel has to be done a certain way? So really giving yourself permission to not be perfect and to be messy and human. And like you said, that, it's enough and that's okay.
Yeah.
It's more than okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it is more than okay. And what's coming up for me is, as you're reflecting back, is it's the to be list. Like, we are human beings. We are not human doings. We don't need a to do list. Like, we need a to be list, and when you think about it, like, for those of you who are moms, right? Like, do you want your child to grow up with memories of mommy constantly being irritable and, snapping and not really being present and available? Or do you want your child to grow up with memories of mommy playing in the dirt and, having paint on her face too as she was finger painting with kiddos? And so it's kind of like putting it into perspective, like, which version of mom do you want to be? Or if you don't have children, like, what version of friend and lover do you want to be? What version of employee do you want to be? And so it's like, basically, what version of you do you want to be?
Yeah, I like that. Shirani, can you share what maybe your suggestions would be for a woman who is, just beginning this process of connecting with herself and wanting to shift this experience?
Yeah, my first things, like, it really starts with setting aside even just 2 minutes a day to sit in quiet time with yourself. And that's, for some people, they're like, what, 2 minutes? I don't have 2 minutes. And it's like, really, you don't have 2 minutes. That 2 minutes, usually you spent scrolling on your Facebook feed anyway. So why don't you put down the Facebook feed 2 minutes earlier, or pick up the Facebook feed 2 minutes later, just so that you can have some time to just connect in with yourself? Because I think that's what we get so caught up in the doing, that we forget about the being. And it's only when we take some time to really sit with ourselves that we can get in touch with and start to nurture that relationship with ourselves. And so that's the first thing, is really taking some time for yourself. Even if that's like, I know some women, and me in particular, I love sitting in the morning with my cup of tea and not doing anything. And when I say not doing anything, really what I'm doing is connecting with myself and my cup of tea. I have a tree outside my back, on my back patio, and I just look at this tree and how beautiful it is, and really just getting so present, so mindful, and so connected both with myself and that thing that is so much greater than me, looping back to what we talked about at the beginning. Like, when I look at that tree, I'm reminded, oh yeah, there's something so much greater than me. Thank you for that. And then the next steps would be to do that activity where you keep track of, okay, what are what are 3 qualities about myself that I appreciate or adore, or that make me me, or that I value? And in the beginning, it often feels really uncomfortable. And that's when I let people know it's okay to think of what your friends have said, or what your partner has said, or what your coworkers have said. Like, it's okay to start pulling from those until you start to be able to generate a list of your own. And so, yeah, starting to affirm those positive qualities, character assets, as they're also known. And so those are kind of the first two steps. And then, from there on out, it just continues to grow and evolve. And I can't believe I forgot this one. Taking care of your basic needs, like hungry, angry, lonely, tired, halt, halt, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. And I'm going to add, and bathroom, because I think, especially as women, one of our things is we forget, and we get so busy doing that we forget that our body has biological needs too. And it's the end of the day, and oh my gosh, I haven't gone pee yet, thankfully not me, but many women I know fall into that trap. I mean, I've seen women in my personal life, it's the end of the day and they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't go pee all day. I have to go pee so bad. And it's like, wow, really, you should take some time to use the restroom and take care of your needs.
Yeah.
So that, down to those basics, in addition to those other couple of tools that are really helpful.
Shirani, thank you so much for all the wisdom and insights that you have shared with our listeners today. I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot. I was nodding my head. And so thank you so much for being here. I wanted to ask you, what are some upcoming projects or events that you'd like to share with our listeners? And also, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, well, I love doing this work so much. And I'm grateful that I was able to be here and share a little bit about this, because I think it's so valuable and so important. And truly, I feel like women, we rule the world if only we would really get in touch with ourselves and allow ourselves to nourish and nurture ourselves in that way. I feel like we'd be in such a different place. So I'm honored to have been here. And again, I love this work. And so on my website, which is www.relationshipcentersv.com, you will find information about our upcoming retreat at the end of September 30th through October 2nd. I'll be facilitating a weekend-long women's retreat in Lake Tahoe, California. So you can find information about that on there. And also, there's a freebie to help women get in touch with these different parts and learn how to start rewriting the script. On my website, you'll also find right there on the homepage, both of these are available right there on the homepage, you'll also find your guide to writing powerful, positive affirmations. And that's just another part of this journey on how to relate with yourself in a different way.
And Shirani, we'll make sure to include links to those resources that you're providing for our listeners, and also to the retreat that you're offering this fall.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much again for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you. It was my honor.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Shirani today. One thing that stood out for me is that the process of loving yourself and getting into a healthy relationship with yourself involves both an inner and outer process. On the inner level, this means paying attention to your thoughts, your feelings, examining your beliefs and values and the scripts you're following, so that you can become more aware of how you're getting stuck and why you're repeating the same unhealthy patterns. For the outer process, what stood out for me was how this can really come down to taking care of our basic needs. Are we eating? Are we drinking water? Resting our bodies and minds? I love how Shirani used the example of a toddler and how not fun a toddler can be when they are hungry or tired. For show notes to today's episode, visit www.lourdesviato.com/podcast, where you will find links to the free guide for writing powerful affirmations that Shirani mentioned, as well as information on the women's retreat that she is facilitating in September. Thanks so much for listening, and see you next time.